But welcome to At the Table. It is our new series that is focused on bringing leadership, entrepreneurship, and all things about women in business and life to the table. I am Dr. Megan Epps, and we're here with Skylar Kolbacki, Dr. Skylar Kolbacki. It's weird to refer to each other as like doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
remember when I first started practicing, I was like, "You don't have to call me doctor." And the doc that I worked for was like, "Yes, they do." And I was like, "Okay."
I actually noticed this. This is a topic we could like start with. One of the big things that I noticed with work, I'm also like that. I'm actually very casual. And I was like, yeah, whatever, you can go, whatever. But then I started to recognize, and I think I would only ever notice this because I work with my husband, Frank, and nobody ever calls him, not nobody, rarely anybody ever calls him Frank. I can count. There's three people that call him by his first name. Every other person calls him Dr. Chi. But
Mhm.
people call me Megan, Miss Megan. Some one child does call me Dr. Chi too. And I think that's the cutest since I didn't change my
Yeah.
last name, but I accept it from him. And it's really interesting because he does not get the first names that I get. And I was like, oh, there's still this undercurrent of I'm Miss Megan, and then that's Dr. Chi. And it does change how people treat you.
I get Miss Skylar a lot.
Yeah, why did because I asked Frank because 'cause I'm not sure that he gets Mr. Chi ever, like, ever.
I highly doubt it. I think it's because we work a lot with kids
Mhm.
and it is so standard or like common for like in the school setting or like with a nanny or a babysitter to say Miss whatever.
Yeah,
So
but
I
it's
think
still
that
like
carries
we're
over.
we're in the sense of authority and that authority does not always carry over, even though, or like if I say in the medical field, I'm sure you have this too, like in the sometimes like checking out, I think it was like at Lululemon or something, and they were like, "Are you a medical provider?" And I was, "Oh, this girl was Christmas shopping. It was not Lululemon, it was somewhere else." And I was like, "Oh, they're like, "Are you a medical provider?" I was like, "Yeah, I am." And they were like, "Oh, a nurse?" And
Mm,
I was, why did you jump to that conclusion? There's so many different medical, and there's nothing wrong with being a nurse, but there's like to jump to the conclusion of like it's the most feminine version of anyone in the medical field versus just saying maybe what do you do or just being more curious is really interesting.
yeah. Yeah. It is kind of fascinating. Although I feel like I don't know if you feel this way, Megan, because we've chosen the field of chiropractic, which is already kind of like a fringe field to begin with,
Yeah.
and we get a lot of, interesting responses to when we tell people, "I'm a chiropractor," or, like, people are just, like, flat out, like, rude to our faces
Yeah.
that I'm
There's
kind
no
of
in between responses. They love you or hate you
yeah.
immediately.
So I feel like it's almost given me this, like, nice thick skin where I'm like, "I could care less."
Yeah.
Like
You know what? I don't go around going, like, "Oh my god," like, the rest of the day, I'm not like, "Can you believe it?" Um, it's more just like in the moment,
an observation,
yeah, I
yeah.
go, this is telling about our society we live in or who I'm talking to, or even, we were out the outlet shopping this past weekend, and we just walked in a store because I need to get steps. So I was like, "We're gonna go in every single store," and it's pouring rain down, and I went in this one store, and they have this purse that is a Christmas tree, but it's not like it's like looks like little white flowers that make up a Christmas tree. I was like, "I'm gonna buy this." And so, we go to pay for it, and, I had no money on me at the time, but I'm with my husband, so, like, I never carry money with me, so it's just me and my jacket, and I don't wanna carry anything heavy, and so I was like, "Oh, hey, babe, like, we're paying for this." And he's like, "Okay." So he goes over, he pulls out cash, and the cash in his pocket is actually from a side job I did. So he has my cash in his pocket and he paid for it. And then on our way out, it was like, no big deal, whatever. It's how we work as a couple. And then as we leave, though, the person who like checked us out was like, make sure you're real nice to him the rest of the day for buying you that. And I know she had good intentions, but my initial response was like, fuck
Ew.
off, which I'll
Yeah.
edit that out. But I literally like, I actually turned around. I was like, actually, that's my money he paid with. And Frank's like, I know that you're really offended by this. And I was like, because it's the idea that one, if you buy me something, I have to be nice to you now. Like I have to pay you
Yeah.
back. Like if I'm your wife, you should just buy me shit. And then
100%.
yeah, I don't owe you anything. Like, and our
You get my
money's
presents.
yeah. And second of all, you don't know how people's money and relationships work. Like there's so many different ways people structure. And like for Frank and I, we
Mhm.
are 100% merged as a person. We can never separate because of that. So
It's that's how
it's
me and my husband are, but
yeah.
that is, like, not the norm, I feel like, anymore.
Yeah. But my whole thing is you just don't know. So why make the assumption? You know?
Yeah. People
Yeah,
are rude.
I know. But I can recognize though that people don't always recognize what they're doing, but it starts to add up because there's still all these things that like tick off. And you're just like, okay, another experience where people make an assumption. And it's just so fascinating because it goes into what our topic for today is, which is self-worth and
Mhm,
self-value, right? And so
mhm.
it's like, especially as I value myself more, I notice things more because I'm like, yes, I can recognize that's that person's value. They feel like what they're saying by that comment, right, over the purse was, I only get things if I pay for them in other ways, by
Mhm.
kindness, by companionship, whatever. But it's I understand that's the telling, but it's like when you hear that all the time, you're like, wow, this is a big problem for women. And that also angers me. But let's get into the story with you.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite. I don't want to say favorite. So I like this is like one of those topics like I love when we talk about this privately, and I know you've been a bit hesitant to bring this out to the world, but this is a topic that so many women deal with.
Yeah, I think self-worth is something probably I could say pretty confidently every woman has had a struggle with at some point in their life. And I would say even more so for women who um have careers that are more, I don't want to say prestigious, but more in like a man's kind of field or man's
Mhm.
world, that it is really something that we struggle with.
Yeah, and I feel like you dealt with this though really early on in your career, and you dealt with it.
Literally right when I started.
Yeah, and you dealt with it in basically all women like experiences with other women. This wasn't something where
Mhm.
men came in. This is you were in a female centric practice and you went to another female centric practice. Um, and your experiences in both, good and bad, were very telling. So, do you want to start us off and just telling like what your experience was and how you felt like when you first graduated from school?
Sure. So I graduated a decade ago, and I remember thinking pretty strongly, like, I want to work with another doc, at least for the first couple years, because I wanted to specialize in working with women and kids, like during pregnancy, postpartum, and all that. And we get some training during school, but not nearly the hands-on experience you would want to be able to go in the field and be like, I'm an expert.
Yeah, well, it's mentorship. You know, we
Yes.
have all the stuff we need to have to be a basic chiropractor. But if you
Mhm.
want to specialize and be anything but a basic chiropractor, you need mentorship and experience.
Yeah. So I saw the value in that. And when I was looking for jobs, I only found 2 in all of the country and all of the listings.
I find that insane.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
There were 2 listings for the specialized care. Nowadays, it's probably a lot more, but back 10 years ago, it was only 2, and one was in Seattle, and I was like, "Yeah." That was my top pick, actually, and then the one was in Delaware, and so I applied to both, and I heard back from both of them, and the Seattle position, they were like, "Sorry, like, we just filled it, like, we don't need your application," essentially, and I was like, "Okay, great." So then I went with the Delaware one, and she was like, "Hey, your application looks great, like, come down, shadow. We'll see, like, if it's a good fit for you." And I remember it was Halloween, and I went down and I wore this, like, cute Halloween outfit,
You love
and
Halloween.
I do love Halloween. And I loved her office, I love her practice, it was all women and kids, there was a good like, it looked really beautiful, and after that shadowing day, she was like, "Do you want the job?" Um, so it was, like, pretty quickly, like, I didn't expect that right away, and I was like, I remember talking to one of my teachers about it, I was like, "You know, she in chiropractic, there's different techniques." So I was like, "She's a bit of a different technique than me. I don't know if that'll be an issue." He's like, "Why?" It's like you said, a mentorship. You're gonna learn. It shouldn't matter. And I was like, "You're right. It is a good opportunity." So I took the job. And at the beginning of the year, I started with her after I graduated. And very quickly, I was kind of like, "Oh, wow. How is this going to go?" Because um, after only literally like a week, maybe 2 weeks of work, we had agreed on a salary. And after only 2 weeks, I don't even think she told me in person. I think she messaged me, like, texted me, and she was like, "Listen, I can't pay you that. I'm only gonna pay you this amount per month," which was very little. And then she was like, "Anything you make over this, you can get a percentage." And I didn't have a patient base. So I was seeing literally no patients. And I didn't have the knowledge or like the self-worth to negotiate it or say, we agreed on this price, even though, and this is a lesson for me, we did not have a written contract. It was all verbal, which is
You
still
did not have a contract? I was gonna ask that
mm-mm.
question.
Yeah, we didn't have a contract. It
Oh,
was all
wow.
verbal. But
That's
a verbal
interesting.
contract is still
It still holds up in court.
binding.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so I was like, "Okay, sure." Because I knew I was like, "Well, I want a job." And I was like, "I don't know what I'd do if I was like, no," and then would leave. So I worked for her, and then I ended up getting, eventually 2 other jobs to help supplement my income because I wouldn't even be able to pay all my bills. But anyway, the biggest issue with the scenario of working with her was she very much I could tell she had in mind certain expectations for me. And she wanted me to do things, but she never sat down and clearly spelled them out for me. There was never hey, Skylar, like, I'm looking for you to see this many patients or like have this goal and we'll meet it. And then we're going to check in and make sure that you're on your way to it. There's literally nothing like that. Um, and so there was very little to no guidance. And she was like, just get people, talk to people, get them in. And I was like, I've never done any of this before. So I was kind of like, okay. So I was trying to figure out how to meet people, how to get patients in. And it was so stressful for me because I was like, any moment she's going to be like, you're out of here. Like, this isn't working,
Yeah, that's
which
I
wasn't
think
working.
I mean, obviously it wasn't working, but it's so interesting how in this scenario that you're describing, I'm sure at the moment you're like, "This is wild, this is happening to me," and, like, you don't the internet was different when this all was happening too. There wasn't
Yes.
that camaraderie that, like, now people just talk about their experiences, but I feel like there's, like, in our field, and I think this is changing, but leading up to this, there's this thing people would say, like, "Oh, chiropractors eat their young," and I
Oh,
heard that
100%
yeah, I heard that from
throughout school.
everyone says it. So it's already like stuck in your head that I'm gonna be taken advantage of. So I have to get into this. And I already know. I feel like the subconscious is you're going to be taken advantage of. So just expect that.
Mhm.
And I look at it a little different after being in the field because I've been on, both sides where I've like worked with chiropractors and then like I've been in situations where it's like working and you're like, "Oh, okay, this is the expectations are different, right?" Like you would come in with one and they come in with the other and then it doesn't work out. And I've also been where it's like really clear cut and it still doesn't work out. So like there's it doesn't necessarily guarantee success. What's interesting looking at it is how people need to be trained on two things that I think we're doing. It's not just as simple as like chiropractors eat their young, like they're coming in to take advantage on purpose. I think what has happened historically is people are told this, so they're already set up for failure exiting school,
Mhm.
where especially if you want to specialize in something, I have to take whatever I can get. Otherwise, I don't feel confident enough because school isn't setting you up for confidence. In fact, I had a whole class with a professor was like, here's why you're going to fail. And that's a whole other topic, but you're like, oh my God. So you exit scared. But then there's nobody sitting down because like we don't have like hospitals and different scenarios that we, especially historically, like chiropractors go for work for themselves or for another chiropractor. There's no one training chiropractors how to be a good boss.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I learned this from a young age, actually, like looking back, reflecting on as one of my parents was a chiropractor and reflecting on that and how they would hire associates, but they'd stay for only a year or two and leave. And then they were always so frustrated. But it was the other side of it where they never set expectations. They would
Mhm.
be like, this is what should be happening. They should be acting this way. They should already know how to act this way. Instead of sitting down and having open dialogue and an agreement on what you want to go after, what the numbers are that you both have an agreement on, and
Mhm.
then what happens if you don't reach those numbers, and also what happens if you exceed expectations. Like all of that has to be laid out. And I think where the failure comes in our profession is people don't know how to be a good boss, and they also don't know how to be a good employee. So you have two sides of just like complete frustration. But as a student, it's like, how do you, coming out of school, how do you even know to ask for more?
Like, I didn't even know what I needed, and you know me, I'm the type of person where it's like, if things are laid out for me, I want to excel and exceed your
Yeah, you're an
acceptances.
achiever.
So, I would have been like, "Girl, you got it. Tell me what to do, and I will do it." Um, but it just never happened. The communication was not there. So she was definitely very frustrated with me because she had these expectations, kind of like what you were talking about in her head, but I didn't know what they were.
And
So
how could you?
yeah, I'm not a mind reader.
Yeah.
Um, so that was the first job I had as a chiropractor. It was the first and only job I've ever been fired from. So
That's so wild.
I was only with her for like 8 months. Mm, or just about that, because I remember she fired me right around my birthday, and I started, like, at the beginning of the year. So,
That's
and
so sad.
the honestly, but when I got fired, I was like, "Ugh, whatever." Like, thank
Yeah.
goodness. I'm done
I
with
mean, it
that.
obviously didn't work out, and I don't think this person's had, not that to my knowledge, an associate since.
No, I think she was like, "I can never do that again."
Yeah.
And, there's something to be said about knowing, I do better by myself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just the
So,
path.
it was
Yeah,
a lesson for her too, I guess.
absolutely.
But yeah, the straw that she says that, broke the camel's back was there was a patient that came in, very pregnant, so I did her baby was breech, we did the Webster technique, and I said, "Okay, tell front desk to put you back on the schedule for this afternoon, we'll get you another adjustment today," kinda like a back-to-back thing. And then, that was, like, in the morning, and by the afternoon, I was done with patients. I probably had, like, 4 or 5, so, like, not many. And there was no one front desk. Either she forgot to ask the front desk to put her on, or the front desk forgot to put her back on the schedule. And I looked at my schedule, I was like, "Okay, well, I have no one else on the books for today." And I was like, "I guess I'm gonna go home because I don't really wanna be here." So I went home, and then that patient showed back up in the afternoon, and then, the doctor was like, "Your patient came back, you weren't here, I can't trust you, it's so unprofessional," which, I mean, yeah, that's not a good look, and she was like, "I have to let you go," and I remember her I very, like, distinctly remember being on the phone with her, and she was like, "I cried all weekend about it, like, I just I and I was like, Why? Like, I'm not crying."
Yeah.
He made it out to be something like she was so tortured by it, and I was like, "Okay, like,
It goes more emotional than professional.
I understand." And I was like,
Yeah.
"You gotta do what you gotta do." And
Yeah.
then I moved on, and honestly, then I started full time with your mom and your guys' practice, and it was probably the best thing that ever happened for me. But it was a serious lesson in self-worth, and I think in just working with others in general, because I do remember not too far before she fired me, her sitting down with me and saying, Skylar, I had to work really hard and I struggled a lot when I started in this profession. So you do too." And I remember thinking, I was only 26. I remember thinking like, "Why would you want other people to struggle like you struggled if you know the hard?" Like, I was
Yeah.
like, "That's
Yeah.
weird."
You laid a foundation. You did the struggle. Like, let someone else take another step.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
think
it
that
was a big
happens a
learning
lot.
experience.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think that's a mindset of a lot of people because I've heard that in various leadership positions most of my life. I remember hearing it once in 4-H. Somebody was like, "We had to do that, so everyone else has to do it." And it's like, well, I don't know if that's how it works. So I remember hearing that from a really, really young age.
Mhm.
And the whole time I just kept thinking, I remember thinking it's not logical to do that. It doesn't make sense. Like it's like a child, right? Like if you have a child, you're not going to be like, you need to struggle, child, because I struggled. Every life is going to have struggles in it. So every career path will have its own struggles that are going to happen. So why make it harder for someone else? Like you don't have to be the person forcing them into a struggle in a
Mhm.
situation for them to learn a lesson. And plus, who knows what lessons each person has to learn, right? I'm very much like we have our own individual journey and we have our own lessons to learn, and the universe delivers those opportunities to learn those lessons. There's no point in us making it harder for someone on purpose.
Yeah, and I think there's a big difference, between helping someone and handing things out to someone. Like, I was never asking like, "Well, you should just be giving me all," like, filling my book with patients and just be paying me, like, a bunch of money was not even the case. It was, "Well, help me, I don't know how to do it."
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, show me so I can do better.
Mhm,
Absolutely. And like how, and I see it still on all the women's pages now. It's like people go, well, how do I feel my book? I'm new, I'm drowning, or I just finished my first year and it was okay, but I'm not thriving. And that comes up all the time.
mhm.
And there's obviously action steps you can take and things you can learn. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's no such thing as like new ideas. You can take other ideas and implement them in your practice, but some of that comes back to having the confidence and trust to be able to bet on yourself and to be able to trust yourself to be able to follow through on this. What are some things that for you, you've been able to do over your career? Because right now you're very confident in your
Mhm.
field and just as a person in general. So, what were the steps in, say, the last decade of your career that you've done to build that that confidence and self worth? Because that is a topic for women, especially that come up time and time again. I don't do this 'cause I don't feel worthy of it.
Mhm. I would say it took me years to, actually embrace my self-worth. It was like not I left that job and then immediately was like, "I'm worthy." I was still very like, "I'm an imposter. I don't know what I'm doing." And
And I think it's
honestly
important for everyone to feel know that everyone feels that way at some point. Like, I feel like people feel very lonely in this journey of the imposter syndrome.
Mhm. Yeah, you're not alone. But probably the biggest thing that helped was when I started full time with your guys' office, we were in a coaching group, and that was my first real experience with coaching that worked on mindset and personal growth. I had, like, kinda heard about it before, but it all seemed kinda silly, like, the whole, like, walking on coals.
Oh,
Do you remember
yeah, Tony
that?
Ramen.
And I was
I
like,
haven't seen that in
"Okay."
person. I need to see that. I wanna experience that.
I was like, "Okay, that seems a little weird, I'm fine." But, this group helped me to really learn about, like, well, if you wanna do well in business and your personal life, you have to put a focus on your own personal growth because it's a reflection. And that
Mhm.
kinda opened the door for me to do that work. And I would say, like I said, it took me a couple years to really figure that out and work that out. And then, once you have that, like, once you, like, know your worth, things just start falling in place. Whether it's in your business or your personal life, like, the right people come into it, and things are just more, solid. They're the way it's supposed to be because you have a good perspective on how you're doing and how you're doing, like, in your world.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I 110% agree with that. I think that's one of the reasons we're having this conversation in our live Zooms, which our next one, by the way, will be on the 29th of January. But we have our monthly live Zooms, and at the table is it's really bringing that personal growth side because realistically, when it comes to business, all the information's out there, whether it's a book, a coaching group, you can get that anywhere. But that personal growth is, I think it's a bad rep, but it really honestly
Mhm,
is what makes a difference in life. Like, for example, that when you're talking about it's a mirror, like your entire life is a mirror of your mindset. And
mhm,
so when you look at like your business is a reflection of you, and
mhm.
your personal life and your relationships are a reflection of you. And then as a result, if you want those to get better, it doesn't mean go and like, hey, everybody be better, or I'm going to do this one thing in my business. It's only going to grow as big as you are. So the more you go, okay, I'm going to focus on my growth while still doing the stuff, action steps towards growing business and growing relationships, but I'm going to work on me. It shifts everything. It absolutely shifts everything. And
Yeah,
I always think about in romantic relationships or friendships, it's like you really can never change another person. But if you start saying, "Hey, what would I want out of this?" and you start acting like the friend you'd want or the partner you want, it's amazing how that's mirrored back to you very quickly from the partners you have. Or if they're a bad partner, they just leave. But it's all good, right? Like it really does mirror back and show back up. And so I actually look at like with business, personal growth is not a thing you should do. It's a non-negotiable. It's the
mhm,
only way to actually grow in business. And it's the only way to really grow a bigger life is to work on you and be like all in on you. And the more you do that work and like confront the fears and the hard work and like even having the question like, why don't I feel worthy? Or what can I do to feel worthy? Taking action steps towards it and doing the harder things, like confidence grows to doing hard things. And that just leads to more like, oh yeah, I can do these hard things and I am a badass.
mhm. Funny enough, when you were talking there and you were like, be the person that you would want to be, like, in a partner, whatever.
Mhm.
On my journey of doing that, I met my husband, you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
As you grew and
Yeah,
could like
I
attract the
became the
right person.
person that
Yeah.
would be a great partner. Um, but yeah, I think it is so important. Everything you said there was awesome and so on the head. But, like, when you start doing this stuff, you're gonna feel silly and you're pretending, and it's like,
It's so
"I'm such a
uncomfortable.
faker." And you know what? Just keep doing it
Yeah.
because that's
Uh,
how we all
yeah.
start.
Yeah, and honestly, in every level so the other thing is, 1, it's always uncomfy. If you're
Mhm.
growing, it's uncomfy. If you're comfortable, you're not growing. And it doesn't mean you can have periods where you're comfortable too, by the way. I feel like sometimes people are like, "I always have to be." It's okay to take some moments, some months, enjoy life a little bit. But there will come a time you want to level up. And this doesn't matter what level you are. Sometimes feel like from the ground up, you might rise to this one level, look back and like, I'm right where I've always wanted to be. And then you're like, oh my gosh, what's next? How am I going to grow next? So, we're always looking to meet our best version of us. And
Mhm.
that is going to take work and effort. But there's never been a moment that it's comfortable if you're really putting in the hard work. And I think that's what really builds the grit, though, and the resiliency and the self worth is doing the stuff that feels really uncomfortable. And I actually keep a journal where sometimes I'll just write and be like, I am uncomfortable. Like, I am really
I'm
uncomfortable
uncomfy
in this
today.
moment. And I just need to share it with the universe. Like, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm still going to take these action steps. And I'm going to like break it down into the tiniest thing to start taking action step. But like, I think it's important everyone knows like there's always going to be a time that if you're really doing something big and you're really growing and you're really looking to create something, it's doesn't feel good half the time.
Yeah. And
And
that's
that's
good.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then there's like the whole purposeful growth, right? Like it's being intentional and setting yourself up to grow and doing hard
Not like
things.
an ego thing.
Yeah. And well, I also
Yeah.
look at it's like we know that challenges make us better. So like I'll sometimes do like a 30-day challenge for new habits I want to implement because that's just I like to gamify things for my brain. But then there's the other thing where like we're hosting the Catalyst. I'm sure some people have seen that online if you're following us and listening to this. But that's a very purposeful, hard thing that sets you up where there's no way you'll go through that, where you'll do training, meetups where we talk about personal growth, and then go into a canyon with a bunch of women, have an amazing time, suffer together, and come out the other side and not have growth, right? That's
Yeah.
very
Be a better
purposeful
person.
action
Yeah.
because you're holding yourself to a higher level and accountability. So there's so many different ways to do it. You can do it by yourself, or you can join us with like Catalyst and push yourself in a different way that you can't do on your own. But there's so many different avenues. And I think that's the biggest thing is being willing to set yourself up to do the hard things.
Well, I have a question. So if someone's listening to this and it's like their first experience ever with personal growth or like development of like self-worth or any of that, like where would you start? Like what's kind of like the ground zero? This is
Of
what
personal growth? Oh,
Mhm.
I think that's great. Okay. So I feel like in the personal growth world, there's going to be levels, right? There's a range. There is some very scientific base, like this is your neurology and how it responds to your environment. And then there's also some very woo woo stuff where it's like you need to go into this meditation plane to manifest and visualize. And all of it has its place. But I think it's the first thing I actually would start with would be like Louise Hayes and her book. It's
I love
very
it.
old school. It's so old school. And like some people would say
Like
maybe
from
go
the
back.
80s.
Yeah. And some
Yeah.
people would say like go back all the way to like Napoleon Hill or something along those lines.
I
Um,
didn't like his book. Did you like it?
I like it, the quotes from the book, but it's not like I mean the book's written then like when? Like 100 years ago, whatever. So it's not like it's
Mm.
like a fun read today. If someone ever rewrote that, it'd be like a bestseller. But I'm sure people have tried.
Funny.
But like I think Louise Hayes really talks about like loving yourself and it lays a foundation of like action steps you can take because she does this whole series. I think her number one book like does this whole series on like how you can grow and like how you can basically love yourself and it gives you action steps. And when you by the way, if you enter in this world initially, you're gonna be like, this is all fake, it's weird. Um, take what little bits that feel oh sorry, we're running out of time.
We got
Um
10 minutes.
10 minutes, yeah. I got to pop up. Take what little bits feel comfortable for you and start implementing them. And you don't have to go, and you're going to find that there's certain stuff that like, I don't believe in like manifesting without action. I feel like manifesting is like overused. So
Mhm.
like, I do believe that you can visualize and like work towards, you need a vision and clarity for future. But you have to figure out what works for you and your values. So I would say one, read Louise Hayes. Two, I get to know yourself. That's one of the biggest things. So many people never ask themselves, like, what do I like? What are my
Mhm.
beliefs? These
Mhm.
beliefs that were given to me when I was a child, do I really believe them or not?
Mhm.
And when you start questioning those things, you start to getting to know you. And there might be stuff you don't like about yourself. And that's okay. You can always evolve and grow. Those are like pain points. You can be like, oh, I'm going to grow in this area. Maybe I'm not as good as connecting with people. I can learn that
Mhm.
skill. And there's other things you're going to be like, wow, I really love that about me. I love that I'm this way. And that's amazing because that's part of that self love. But you really can't do self growth without knowing you. So those are me.
Oh,
What about
okay, I
you?
love
What are
that,
your
I love
tips?
that. Maybe I like that too. I feel like part of on the journey for myself personally that really helped me was exactly that, getting to know myself. And I think the one thing that really did help me, which I know that you obviously love, was the Enneagram.
Oh, I love the Enneagram, but I
So
think a lot of
figuring
people we'll have to do a whole thing on the Enneagram.
we
Don't
should.
get it wrong.
People get it wrong, but I think doing that, learning more about myself, most particularly, what am I afraid of?
Ooh,
Because
yeah.
when I figured that out, it told me a lot about my behavior, why
Yeah.
I was doing what I was doing.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I did a lot of, like when I did the Enneagram, one of the things that resonated is, like, the worst side of me, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, okay, well, I don't wanna be that person, so, like,
Yeah. And when
I
you do
won't
the
do that."
Enneagram and you read about like the unhealthy version of your type, you're like, I hate that about everything about
Yeah.
that is everything I hate about myself.
That's how my mom knows her. She's like, "I don't
Yeah.
wanna be this." That's how I
Yeah.
know it's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you do the Enneagrams, remember, it's not about the quality because, like, you and I both are achievers, but we are not the same Enneagram. So, it's really about the intention behind your action. So, it's why you're doing these things because
Mhm.
multiple people can want the same things and have the same action, but it's why you take those action steps that I think is what defines your Enneagram, and that's when you look at it from that point of view, it changes things, because people idolize certain ones depending on the crowd you're in, which is
Yeah.
wild.
No.
But there is no good or bad one. But it is a great I'm glad you brought that up. It's such a good tool to get to know yourself.
Well, we can link our favorite source for
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we can
But
link all of that.
I think you're totally right. Getting to know yourself better and like the like dark, yucky, scary parts of yourself that you don't really like
Yeah.
to
Well, I think you
investigate.
called it, like, shadow work.
Your fears, the parts of you that you're like, I don't really love that part of me.
Yeah.
But getting to know that, because then you can work, we're always going to have that. But if you can work on understanding that, you can move towards the version of yourself that you
Yeah.
most
Well, also
appreciate.
compassion, like, sometimes you're taught to dislike a side of yourself that's not really worth disliking. Like, I think unless you're a cruel, mean person, like, there's value in so many traits, and
Like
so
anger.
yeah,
Mhm,
people sometimes will dislike that because anger is also passion, right?
mhm.
So you don't have to hate these traits inside of you. Like, I think part of self-worth is self-love, right? So you need to like when you get to know yourself, like you said, you're gonna find these sides that are a little darker. And I think like compassion with that side of you and say,
Mhm.
okay, I'm gonna this is probably coming from somewhere in my childhood, or I called the mother, father, preacher, teacher. Somebody said at a young age we learn that. And I love that, where it's like we learn our belief systems and who we're supposed to be from a very young age. And people who are in authority positions tell us about it. And we internalize it. And so there is this whole path of unlearning these things. That's the questioning of yourself and getting to know you, where you go, okay, well, am I really like my mom used to always say my brother's good at math and I'm good at English. And it's like, is that true? Well, I'm also good at math. So, and he's perfectly fine at reading and English. And there's he
Yeah.
can interpret things perfectly fine and reading comprehension's great. Like it's just these things that are given to us. And then you start to identify as that. And it's like, that's not necessarily who you are. And you can also like you should be evolving. So like just because you were like that at like 14 does not mean you're going to be like that at 36, right? You're a whole different person. And it's okay to accept that. But all of that really goes back to just who are you and what are the traits that you have and being okay with having those traits.
Yeah. So I guess probably the lesson of this discussion was to really build your self-worth is to get to know yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's if we were to summarize it down, like get to know you. And part of it is if you're like, that sounds scary, like you can join us on these. We'll be releasing this every Sunday. But join us for the lives and we'll be talking about this and having this discussion. So you can ask all of your questions on any of the topics we've covered. And we can go a little bit deeper in helping give some tools and resources and really just having open discussion around it.
Yeah. Something to know about me and Megan is we love to teach
Yeah.
and share things. So if you have questions, we'll be like, okay, here are these 10 things
Yeah.
that you can look
We
at.
like breaking it down and then like, let's apply it and go from
Yeah.
there. Yeah,
So we're
absolutely.
never gonna like say something and be like, leave you hanging and you'll be like, well, where do I even start with this? We'll be like, okay, here's what you do.
Yeah, yeah, just follow up with us. That's
Yeah.
the biggest thing. You have to take some action step on it though, because we don't know if it doesn't if you need more things without us being told.
Yeah, again, we're not readers.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been a really great session and thank you for joining us for At the Table. We'll be back next Sunday.
Yeah.